Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 10 Star Trek episodes that absolutely make my blood boil. So this is a Patreon requested video, requested by patron Jordan Johnson. Thanks so much for your request. So, this is different than my top 10 worst episodes because this is specifically about episodes that enrage me, that make me angry. And not every terrible episode has that reaction. For example, the fight, I actually get a lot of enjoyment out of watching it because it's so terrible that it makes me laugh. And it's also a little boring too, but so that doesn't make my blood boil. It doesn't make me angry, but I have called it the second worst episode of the franchise just because it's just so goddamn bad. Same thing with Sub Rosa. I don't really think it's enjoyable to watch. I hate watching Sub Rosa, but I laugh at it, and I think it's so laughably bad. So it's a different reaction than actually, angering me. So there's some episodes on this list that I think maybe aren't as bad as some others that aren't on the list because it's not about what's the worst episode. It's about the ones that enrage me. And there's many reasons, different reasons, which I'll get into in this list of why episodes could anger me. Some of them have to do more with actually the fan reaction to it, where specifically where people defend, like a majority of people defend the episode. That can really anger me when I watch it, and also misinterpret the episode, which I'll get into, or maybe it's just something that the writers did, and that something that it just come off as didn't even try, and that kind of angers me. So yeah. So, we'll get into my top 10 episodes of the entire Star Trek franchise, including Modern Trek. I showed Modern Trek a little bit of love. I feel like I might have forgot some Discovery episodes because it's been a long time since I've seen Discovery. So, someone might be, oh, Mark, what about this episode? You said you really hate it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot. But I tried, and I might have forgot some other episodes of other Star Trek as well. But I try. It's always hard with these top 10s because I can't, spend too much time looking over every single episode list, so sometimes episodes slip my mind, and I was like, fuck, I should have put that on there. But anyway, I tried my best. So what I'm going to do is, because I want to mention, because I came up with a short list of 18 episodes, and I want to mention every episode. So what I'll do is I'll just list the titles of my honorable mentions until I get to my top 3 honorable mentions, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on them, and then we'll get into the top 10 proper, which I'll get into even more detail for those. Cool? Cool. Alright, so let me bring up the list here. So first honorable mention is the Savage Curtain. Next honorable mention is Assignment Earth. And next honorable mention is Descent Part 2. Next honorable mention is This Side of Paradise. Next honorable mention is Equinox Part 2. And next honorable mention is Coda. So then we'll get to my top 3 honorable mentions. First of those is a Renaissance Man, the episode that turned the Doctor into a Mary Sue. Now, I did have a laughing reaction as well to this episode, like when the Doctor does that flip and phasers Tuvok. I literally laughed out loud, but it still angers me. It's like laughing in an angry way because this is so stupid and it's so symbolic of how they destroyed the Doctor's character and turned him into a dumbass Mary Sue. Like, this episode is so ludicrous, it angers me that they had the penultimate episode with this bullshit, and also is another example of them running into aliens that they should be fucking light years away from. But anyway, next honorable mention is 2 of 1 from Star Trek Picard. Now, some people might be surprised it's only an honorable mention, but the thing is that because when I first saw this episode, I was enraged. I was angry. But the thing is, that's because at that time I was still hoping Star Trek Picard Season 2 would be good. And that's why this is the episode that hit where I realized, no, this season's going to be a total dump dumpster fire. And it only got worse from there. So when I look back at the season as a whole, I'm like, it doesn't anger me as much anymore, because I'm like, yeah, the whole season is the worst. It's just a dumpster fire. It's the worst thing that it's the worst season of the entire Star Trek franchise, easily. And so it doesn't anger me as much, but it still does anger me enough to be an honorable mention, because the only thing I really remember about it, because I never want to have to sit through this bullshit again, but I'm sure I'm gonna have to at least once. But the only thing I really remember about it is the whole Girardi being taken over by the Borg Queen and singing a song up on the stage, and someone operating the spotlight, and when she was just some random person at the party that they crashed. Like, what? It was just so terrible. It threw me in rage fits. Anyway, final honorable mention is Manhunt from TNG, which enrages me because it's look, it's the Alexander Troy sexually harassing men, and they have like Pulaski be like, oh, isn't that funny? Oh, he's being sexually harassed. Oh, keep him on his toes. Not only is this episode like annoying as fuck, because they're just rehashing the exact same jokes they did with Alexander Troy in Haven, but worse. It has that element where, isn't it funny she's sexually harassing everyone, which pisses me off. Anyway, so then we will get into my top 10. Starting with my number 10, hashtag fuck the muse. The reason why I love saying that, it was one of my commenters who came up with that, but still I love saying that because seriously, fuck this episode. So this is when we're getting to part of the fan reaction, because I hear way too often, which enrages me, people say that Loxana Troy was better in Deep Space Nine than Next Gen. Now, other than Manhunt, which I just mentioned, all of her Next Gen appearances are better than all of her DS9, with the exception of Manhunt. And this episode in particular, I hear people defend and be like, oh, it was actually a good storyline with Loxana and Odo. It was kind of touching. No, it wasn't! It was shit! It was, Odo, it was such a sitcom trope, cliche bullshit, and I didn't buy any chemistry between Loxana and Odo. It was completely out of character for Odo to actually be like, oh, I'm kind of in love with you. Bullshit you are! Like this, the whole thing, and that guy was like, oh, if you could convince me you love her, I'll let you keep her. Bullshit he would! This is so bad! I can't. It raises me that people defend that storyline. But to be fair, they do agree with me, most people anyway, about the Jake storyline being total shit. And that kind of enrages me a little bit for the fact that they should have had Jake join Starfleet. And this proves that they didn't know what the fuck to do with the character when they made him a writer. Oh, let's have this magical muse alien make him write good stories. And the advice she was giving him was like some advice like a teacher in my creative writing class would give me, but she was doing it like, ooh, it was like so dumb. But anyway, so next we will get into my number 9, which is an episode that kind of enrages me because it is not fun, and that is Bada Bing Bada Bang. Far too many people defend this episode. This is one of the worst episodes. Vic Fontaine is the worst character in the Star Trek franchise. I got a video out, or coming out soon, actually, maybe tomorrow, that will get into more detail about why exactly he's the worst character in the franchise. People defend him, and people defend this episode. You know what they say about this episode? Ooh, it's fun! No, it fucking isn't! It's not the least bit fun. It is a dictionary definition of not fun! It is annoying. It is nails on the chalkboard. It is just a cliche heist rip-off storyline. And someone once asked me, well, do you like any heist movies? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I like some that are original, some that do their own spin to the heist tropes and like do something original with it. This is absolutely not that. This is the opposite of that. This is just throwing every cliche on the chalkboard and doing it in such a contrived way. I mentioned before, this is one of the most contrived episodes of the entire show because the plot makes absolutely no sense. This whole Jack in the Box thing was such a weak, bad writing, bullshit excuse to do this dumbass heist episode with this stupid-ass hologram character, and it's just it boils my blood. Anyway, and it's not fun! So next, we will get... I should have known I would get very angry with this video. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 8, which is... We'll always have Tom Paris from Lower Decks, and yes, I stand by this is the worst episode of Lower Decks. Now, to be fair, let me just get it out of the way. There is a good storyline in this episode. With Mariner and Tindy going off and having their adventure, and they had that joke with Tindy tells Mariner to speak like a pirate. She goes, "Arr!" This is amazing. So that's a good storyline. But it's only out of 3 storylines, it's the only good one. The other 2 are terrible, and one is absolutely fury-inducing. So first I'll get into the Tom Paris thing with Boimler. It was a waste of a cameo. Tom Paris didn't really do anything, and the whole thing with Boimler, the ship not recognizing him, was nonsense. Like, that wouldn't happen. And when he shows up all dirty and Tom Paris like, look at Kazon, that was so stupid. But come on, let's get to the heart of why this episode makes my blood boil and why I think is the worst episode of Lower Decks. The bullshit resurrection of Shax. Now, one thing I want to make very, very clear, extremely clear, is that I don't have an issue with them bringing Shax back to life. Perfectly fine with it. They can make a joke out of it. In fact, that's what I was expecting. I was expecting to see like a parody of Star Trek 3 or something like that. Like, yeah, do make a joke out of it. Do come up with something really fun and interesting. But what do they do instead? Oh yeah, no, it's just all Star Trek characters come back to life all the time. It's just something that happens. We don't talk about it. That is so rage-inducing. First of all, because it's lazy writing. Like, I expected more from the Lower Deck writers. As I said, I expected like a great parody of Search for Spock or something like that. And also, if we exclude Modern Trek and we only include any, pre-Discovery, one fucking time did a character die and then the movie or episode ended and then later on they're brought back to life. Once. And don't give me the bullshit, oh, people die and they come back 5 minutes later. That is not even remotely close to the same thing, because the season finale of Lower Decks, season 1, ended in this big emotional thing. They expect you to cry, and they was like, oh, isn't this so emotional? Shaq's dying. And then 3 episodes later, bring him back, and like, oh, who cares? He's just back. Nobody, it doesn't matter. Just don't talk about it. What the fuck is that? That is such bullshit, and it undermines the whole show. Like, I'm sorry, it undermines the stakes of the show because of the, not that because they brought Shax back. As I said, perfectly fine with them bringing Spock back, perfectly fine with them bringing Shax back, and then later in Modern Trek we'll do it several times with like Culber and other people, but perfectly fine with that. Although Culber had some issues with, but that's another story. But I'm fine with that as long as they do it in a way that's respectful to the material, that respects it. And I felt like this was completely disrespecting. It was a lazy way to do it. It was not the proper way to do it, so it infuriates me. especially when people defend it. Anyway, so let me get into my number 7, which is In the Flesh from Voyager, the episode that completely and utterly destroyed what was otherwise a potentially very interesting villain. Now, I get that Species A472 was overpowered, and maybe the writers didn't know what the hell to do with them because they were too overpowered. However, like, they came up with this Borg nanotechnology that could fight them off, so that I think that kind of negates their overpoweredness a bit. But the whole point of Species A472 was that they were space Nazis. They were xenophobic. They were against any organic life in the Milky Way galaxy because they come from fluidic space. So they considered all life in the galaxy to be like ants, like inferior life forms. The weak will perish, is what they said, and that made them a very scary, very interesting villain. And the dynamic they did in Scorpion with putting them up against the Borg, where you got two scary, evil bad guys fighting each other, was a very interesting dynamic. But they clearly just too lazy to come up with any other interesting way to use them. Personally, if they couldn't come up with anything, I would have preferred they not use them at all. If you have nothing good to say, then don't say anything at all. I would have preferred that. But instead, they did this bullshit where they tried to retcon them and say, "Oh, we actually thought you were the bad guys because you made an alliance with the Borg. We just wanted to be friends." What the fuck is that? And then, on top of that, they go to Janeway and they're like, oh, you're lying when you say they're not in the Delta Quadrant. So they recreated Starfleet Academy perfectly, to the T. Every blade of grass, every book on the shelf, every uniforms, everything was created to the T. And yet, they didn't even know that Starfleet Academy isn't in the fucking Delta Quadrant. This is the worst writing, the laziest writing. And then we had the scene where they wasted several great actors in a ridiculous scene where they're negotiating with the God. It's just enraging. It's enraging. So anyway, we'll get into my number 6, which is Dark Frontier. I think Voyager kind of dominates my top 10 a little bit. But anyway, this is the episode where Joe Manowski, it's funny, I love one of my Patreon supporters nicknamed him Joe I Don't Care About Continuity Manowski, because that's what he specifically said about writing this episode. I don't care about continuity. And I think that just makes you a bad writer. It makes you a lazy writer. Because I always talked about before that, I don't mind, as I said, sometimes I don't mind retcon. Sometimes I don't mind when they defy continuity. But you got to do it in a way that's respectful and that's worth it and that makes sense. Him just totally disregarding is breaking the contract, because here's the thing: when you're writing for an established franchise like this, you are at an advantage because you have a built-in fan base. Voyager started with an advantage over most other original sci-fis. Ask any B5 fan will tell you that show doesn't get nearly as much credit as it deserves, which is what they think, not necessarily what I think. But anyway, that's regardless. So when you're writing for this established franchise, you got a built-in fan base, you have an advantage. And the cost of that huge advantage that you get is that you have to stay true to what was established. So by trying to be like, oh, fuck that, I don't have to stay true to any of it, then you're not being true to the franchise. You're taking this, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. You want to have this advantage without paying the cost. So fuck you. That's actually very lazy, terrible writing. And this episode's one of the worst examples of this. Like I said in my original review for this, it's like if someone was reading a book and then in the next chapter, it totally retconned the previous pages and trying to be like, oh, that never happened. Is why do people think it's okay to do that in a TV show but not a book? Like, I don't fucking get it. It's not okay. It's a sign of lazy writing. In this case, what I'm specifically talking about is them saying that the Borg, that 7 of 9's parents like discovered the Borg like 20 so years ago, when it's been extremely clearly established that the Federation just met the Borg, never even heard of the Borg until Q-Who, which was just like 6 or something years before this episode. And don't give me the bullshit about First Contact, because that was made after this episode, or after Q-Who and whatever, and that doesn't justify fucking, it just doesn't. But more than that, though, the thing that actually pisses me off worse than, because there's a lot of things about this episode that piss me off. Not just that. It's also in the defying continuity category. I feel like my intelligence is actively being insulted as a viewer when they introduce the storyline where the Borg Queen says, oh, 7 of 9, I put you on this Voyager on purpose so you could gather information about the humans so I could create this super virus to wipe out humanity or assimilate them or whatever. I feel like that does seem like the writer is, in a sense, saying to me, you're a moron. You'll eat up anything that I put because you are dumb. You're stupid. That is what that scene is saying to me on several levels, because first of all, clearly that's not the case. Clearly, 7 of 9 was not intentionally put on Voyager because she actively tried to destroy the ship repeatedly, and just so happened that Janeway got the better of her, and just so happened that Janeway decided to keep her and have her, rediscover her humanity. Like, you are really insulting my intelligence to tell me that the Borg Queen pre-planned that, which very, 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 very clearly she did not. Secondly, to say that, they put, they wanted to create the super virus. Why the fuck don't they just send several, if they really want to get humanity that badly, send several Borg ships to Earth and assimilate them instead of just one? Like, the Starfleet barely defeats one ship, but they send 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, if they really want to Earth that badly. Why the fuck don't they do that? Especially when the transwarp hub comes into play, but I'll talk about that later. But anyway, and also the super virus or whatever that could assimilate humanity instantly or wwhatever, never mentioned again after this episode. Completely disappears. Look, I just can't with this episode. I just can't. But anyway, yeah, it's infuriating. And people like this episode. People try to defend it about, this is a good episode. Like, the Borg Queen should have never been reintroduced to Voyager. She's such a cartoon, ridiculous character, and this is the first episode that utterly, because the Borg on Voyager were actually good up until this episode, which utterly destroyed them. Anyway, so next we'll get into my number 5, which is Turnabout Intruder from the original series. Now, this episode enrages me because it's obviously sexist. It goes against everything that Star Trek stands for. Doing research for this episode, how it was written, I found out it was when Roddenberry was very going through a rough divorce, and he had became a bit angry towards all women. He had quoted as saying, and I'm quoting Roddenberry here, all women are bitches, in the writer's room of Star Trek, and this episode is very clearly about how women should just stay in the kitchen. This is like repeated over and over again. Oh, she should just be happy being a woman. Why is she not happy being a woman? Now, some people in modern times try to reinterpret it and justify it as having to do with gender dysphoria, but it doesn't have anything to do with just gender dysphoria. What it is about, very clearly, is about, well, if she's trying to have a job like a man, to be like a captain, starship captain, or leadership, she doesn't respect being a woman. She wants to be like, she's trying to be like a man. They should just stay in the kitchen. Very clearly. And part of what fucking angers me so much about this is the fan backlash. Or, not backlash, but backlash to my interpretation, which is the only objectively correct interpretation. Freaking even Roddenberry apologized for it, although he won't admit to the extent to which, of course, he was being sexist. But William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy do, like, they flat out point out how sexist it is. But, like, even, disregarding that, any honest interpretation of this episode makes it very clear that that is absolutely 100% the intention of the writers in this episode. And it angers me when people, they're not saying women can't be starship captains. They're just saying that this particular person happens to be crazy. Which very clearly, there's repeated lines. Like Scotty even uses the word hysteria to describe Lester, which you should know the social context about that, about dismissing women. And they keep saying, like, when Kirk, the final line, unfortunately, of the entire show, is Kirk saying, she could have had just a rich and beautiful life if only she could have, accepted being a woman, if only, and that trails off, and the unspoken part of that sentence is, if only she should have stayed in the fucking kitchen and stopped trying to do a man's job like a starship. It's so clear, and it pisses me off when people, especially in like videos like this, when I don't have that much time to get into the like extreme detail, which in my actual review, like, I dissected it and spent an hour just on this topic. But people will watch a segment of like top 10 worst videos where I can only talk about this for like 2 or 3 minutes and try to argue with me, and when I'm not able to go into like extreme, because it's fucking clear that god damn it. But anyway, we'll get into my number 4, which is a similar reason why this episode enrages me, and that is Prophet and Lace. Though, to be fair, this episode doesn't have as many defenders or people trying to be like, this isn't... But it still enrages me more because I think it's... Well, it does have one defender, is Ira Stephen Bear, who wrote it. And there was this scene in the documentary, What We Leave Behind, where Ira Stephen Bear is talking to the editor, and they're talking about how, they did some good things for, for sexual orientation, or, promoting sexual identity or sexual preference and sexual orientation, I guess I would say. Like, they said, there's some episodes that were really good and made good social commentary on that, like Rejoined and Prophet and Lays. And I'm like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? Prophet and Lace is the opposite of making good. It made terrible commentary on that. It comes off as extremely homophobic, transphobic, sexist, sexist, let me clarify, towards men and women, not just women, also towards men, and it's just offensive. It promotes sexual harassment. Like, this is like one of the most offensive episodes, like, probably the most, actually. It is, no, not probably. It is the most offensive episode, even more so than Code of Honor. If you're wondering why Code of Honor didn't make my list, it's because pretty much everyone and their mother recognizes how racist it is. So it doesn't anger me as much as some of these other episodes where it's not as recognized as it should be. But yeah, I mean, it blew my mind that the editor would fucking say that. Like, it has a scene where Quark is sexually harassing this Dobble girl and trying to say you have to give me umox, which is essentially a hand job, otherwise you'll lose your job. And they play it for laughs. It has this comedic dun 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 dun, isn't this funny? Sexually harassing her, and then at the end, they had that same woman come back and say, "Oh, I am really looking forward to giving you umox," which is so disgusting. Like, I shouldn't have to explain why. That is utterly misogynistic and disgusting. Not to mention the fact that when Quark had his sex change, that the guy who was actively trying to, who was attracted to her, tried to rape Quark, and they played that for laughs too. And then they had, when he kissed him, they had Brunt be utterly disgusted. Oh my god, this is so disgusting. A man is actually kissing this other man who had a sex change. Although I won't call Quark a woman because he doesn't actually identify as a woman. He's just doing it for bullshit reasons, which again is kind of disgusting. Like, this whole episode is so fucking offensive. Anyway, and yeah, a lot of people do hate it and do recognize this as one of the worst episodes, but I've seen a lot of people not really acknowledge the extent of just how offensive it is, and also try to defend it. Oh, it's actually kind of funny. Well, here's the thing. Just leaving aside all of the offensive, let's just ignore that and pretend it's not there. This episode is so unfunny. It is, like, so unfunny. Like, nothing about it is funny. They keep repeating Sluggo Cola, the slimiest cola around. It's like, they keep repeating it like it's supposed to be funny, but it's fucking not. This is just... It's why I think it's the worst episode in the entire franchise. Anyway, let's get to my number 3. Number 3 episode that makes my blood boil, and that is two-parter, Vox and the Last Generation from Star Trek Picard Season 3. Now, a lot of people like this episode. I don't know why. This episode actively angers me because Star Trek Picard Season 3 was a good season. It could have been a good season. Started out really strong. It had some issues here and there, some cheesy stuff, and way too much member berries. But for the most part, it was, I guess, I was into it. It could have been a really strong season. And they were teasing this mystery of, what's going on with Jack Crusher? Something's happening to him, and why do the bad guys want him so badly? And the whole time, like, especially when we got towards the end of the season, I'm like, please don't let it be the Borg. Please don't let it be the Borg. Please don't let it be the Borg. And then we get to this episode, and like, it's the Borg! I'm like, fuck! God damn it! Can't you just leave the Borg alone? Can't you just leave them alone? And on top of that, like, I'm sorry, but this episode feels like it was fan fiction written by a 13-year-old. That's how this episode comes off. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if the Changelings and the Borg made an alliance, and that the Borg tried to come up with the super virus that would assimilate only the young people, and that would allow the older people to, who are my main cast members, to try to fight them off, and we could give them the Enterprise D back, even though it makes no practical sense to fly the Enterprise D like a fucking X-Wing. It was such obvious, and I can't, it partly enrages me how many people fell for that very obvious member berry nostalgia baiting, which was so cliche, so contrived, and so just forced. and they fell for it. They're like, whoa, that's cool. The Enterprise D. Who gives a fuck? I want good writing. I don't want member berries. I want fucking good storytelling, not fan fiction written by 14-year-olds. And on top of all this, which is really what pushes it up to number 3, on top of all this, they say that the Borg were wiped out in Endgame, which never fucking happened. This is something Rick Berman was saying in interviews, but it's never true. Like, in the episode Endgame, which I will talk about very shortly, but in the episode Endgame, they didn't say anything about the Borg being wiped out. In fact, they very heavily implied that the Borg would still be around. The whole point was Janeway is like, oh, we got to strike a blow against the Borg. They never said we have to wipe out the Borg. That would have changed the whole stakes of that episode if they thought that they would wipe out the Borg. That was never on the table. It was never the case. And also, hey, the Borg appeared in Star Trek fucking Prodigy, which takes place after Endgame. And then this try to retcon it to be like, oh no, the Borg actually were wiped out in Voyager. The fuck? They were! God damn it, why do you have to have the Borg on here? It's... anyway. It was such fucking terrible reveal. Anyway. Get to my number 2 most infuriating episode, and you guessed it because I just said it. It is Endgame from Star Trek Voyager. God damn. And so many people defend this episode. So many people try. It's on top 10s. Whenever I see it on the top 10 best list, it makes my blood starts boiling. My blood pressure goes up. It does not deserve to be in a top 10 best list. It deserves to be in a top 10 worst list. And then you have the people who will say, oh, it's fine. It's mediocre. It's good. It's not that terrible. Wrong! This is the worst series finale of all time. Of all time. There's no Seinfeld, Alf, what have you. No. None of Game of Thrones, even fucking Game of Thrones. No. None of it is as bad as Endgame because it's the most disrespectful finale to the show. It doesn't respect the show that came before at all. It takes the whole goal of the show was the Voyager trying to get home, and it does it in the most disrespectful, disinterested way. It's so disinterested. It doesn't. The characters and the writers, everyone really don't give a shit about Voyager getting home. And so the result of that is that the audience doesn't give a shit either. And I'm surprised because one person tried to defend this episode and they're like, what? But Voyager got home. And yeah, and nobody gave a shit. Now, I get the theme of the journey is more important than destination. Fine. There's a way you can do that theme and still be respectful of accomplishing this goal that the audience has been waiting 7 fucking years to see. And this ain't it. This is the opposite of it. It's just so nobody gives a shit. Only Harry Kim sheds a tear. Only good part of the episode. But that's not a fucking enough. That's not even close to enough. Like the fucking... And having the episode end as soon as Voyager gets back to Earth without showing them actually getting back to Earth is the biggest middle finger I've ever seen writers and producers of a show ever give their audience. Ever. It was really is worse than Joe Manowski insulting my intelligence with the 7 to 9 bullshit. This was Rick Berman saying, fuck you, you wasted your time watching this show. And there's tons of other shit that I could get into that I've gotten into plenty other times, like why the fuck is Barkley being treated like a main character when he's a next-gen character who's only a supporting character who appeared in like 4 episodes before? Why the fuck they Borg have this intergalactic hub where they could have assimilated the whole fucking galaxy by now? And why the fuck did they put Chakotay and 709 together, who is the absolute worst couple in the entire Star Trek franchise and had absolute zero chemistry, and many other things that make my blood boil. So that was a very, very close contender to number 1. In fact, I usually put Endgame at number 1 on any of my worst lists. But one episode did happen to beat it out. And anyone in my channel probably guessed it correctly. My number 1 episode that absolutely makes my blood boil is Tuvix. And this has a lot to do with the fan reaction to this episode. I wasn't really, I guess, that in touch with the fan base when I first started my channel 10 years ago, and I did a top 10 Voyager. I thought, I'll put in, say, my top 10 best episodes of Voyagers and my top 5 worst episodes of Voyager. And I put Tuvix on the list thinking nothing of it, because surely everyone else recognizes this shit episode for how shitty it is, right? Well, I was pleasantly surprised with all the immense, intense pushback that I got on this episode, with people like, what? That's a great episode. And so then when someone requested a video, because it was back when I was taking episode review requests, and they were like, okay, I'm actually curious why you don't like this episode. So, okay, I'll tell you. So I did an episode review where it broke down exactly why I thought that episode was shit. And whoa, that got even more angry pushback. I got people writing like essays of bullshit, I should say, to me, trying to argue with me over this. Because here's the thing, this is part of why this episode would anger me even without the fan reaction, just to be clear. But the fan reaction just makes it so worse. In fact, there was a time where I just didn't want to talk about this episode at all. I think I was doing my season by reviews, and I just wanted to, when I got to Tuvix, I just wanted to be like, so the next episode is Tuvix next, and just skip over it, because I really did. I was so angry, I didn't even want to engage. In fact, I think I was doing my top 50 worst episode or top 30 worst episodes of Voyager. I had to cut out part of what I was saying because I was being too insulting. I was screaming and yelling and throwing insults, and I was like, no, this is too much. I can't include this in, so I had to cut it out. Because nothing makes my blood boil more than talking about this episode. Because here's the thing. What the episode tries to tell you is that Tuvix was killed by Janeway. And that's absolutely not what we see. And this is always what I thought from the very first time I saw this episode. When I saw Tuvix going around the bridge yelling, I want to live! I'm like, what? Like, what the fuck is happening? And in fact, I described that moment as laughably bad. Like, I laughed out loud. It was so cheesy and so out of nowhere, because this is a silly premise. This should have been a comedic episode. This is a dumb, stupid premise about Tuvok and Neelix getting combined into one person. Instead, all of a sudden, they were trying to play it like some over-the-top melodrama, with him going, I want to live! I'm like, what in the actual fuck? Like, how could anyone seriously? And it blows my mind to this day that people can watch that scene and actually think it's good drama and not the stupidest, dumbest shit you've ever seen in your life. It absolutely blows my mind. Because here's the thing. First of all, Tuvix is supposed to be a version of Neelix and Tuvok, and he's not. he's a narcissist who only cares about himself. And doesn't give a shit about anyone else. Now you might say, oh, that's not fair because they're trying to kill him, which I'll get to later. They're not. But let's say for the sake of argument they were. Compare it to the episode Similitude in Enterprise, which did the same premise but correctly. This did this premise incorrectly. It totally fucked it up. Whereas Similitude was like so much better, it's even hard for me to calculate. It's like infinitely better than this episode, and it does this premise correctly. In that case, Sim almost ran away to save his life, but then he was like, I couldn't do it because I know I would hurt the ship. And in the end, he was willing to sacrifice himself for the ship because he was Tucker. So why the fuck is Tuvix, who's supposed to be Tuvok and Neelix, have no regard for the rest of the ship? He's a narcissist. But let me get to the crux of what makes my blood boil. Is this whole thing about, the argument is, was Janeway justified in what she did to Tuvix? Did she murder Tuvix or not? And here's the thing. I think that whole argument's bullshit. The whole argument is irrelevant. Who cares? Like, people always talk about, it's a big argument, debate amongst the fan base. To me, that debate is null and void. Like, I don't give it. The debate is invalid because Tuvix didn't fucking die, because Tuvix never fucking existed. Tuvix was always Tuvok and Neelix. It's a version of Tuvok and Neelix, and got smushed into one version, and then Janeway restored Tuvok and Neelix to their original version. That's not killing. She did not kill Tuvix because Tuvix never fucking existed in the first place. It was always Tuvok and Neelix. And she just restored Tuvok and Neelix to their original form. I made several analogies on this, such as the episode Enemy Within. When Kirk, it's kind of the opposite of this episode. Instead of two people being joined into one person, Kirk was split into two people. But in that instance, they had to rejoin the two versions of Kirk together, and nobody said, "Oh my God, you're killing the good Kirk and you're killing the evil Kirk." No, there's no fan debate over did Spock kill the good and evil Kirk, because we understand that they're just two versions of fucking Kirk. Just like you just reverse that logic, this is just a different version of two fucking people. And then the other analogy I like to make is the episode Riddles, which in that case, Tuvok is, brain damage, and he becomes a totally different person. He likes jazz music, he's friends with Neelix, he's emotional, he likes to have fun. He's a different person in every respect. I would argue even more so than Tuvix is, but he is a different person. Yet, in that episode, they correctly didn't have him going around being, I want to live! And instead they treated it like a surgery that he didn't want to go through with, which is exactly how they should have treated this episode. Instead of the ridiculous melodrama, they should have had Tuvix saying, I like being this form. I don't want to have this surgery. Please don't force me to do it. But then Janeway saying, I'm sorry, but we need to restore you to how you're originally meant to be. If they had done it that way, I would have been fine. But this whole thing, you're killing me, you murdered me, and Janeway murdered Tuvix. Bullshit! Because Tuvix didn't fucking die. Because if he died, where's his body? Where's his DNA? Let me see. Because if you phaser someone, there will be DNA lying around somewhere. But so where's his DNA? His DNA is in Tuvok and Neelix because he fucking is Tuvok and Neelix. And the other analogy that I made is like Saying that Janeway killed Tuvix is like saying that I killed my 12-year-old self. Because my 12-year-old self was a totally different person, liked hip-hop music, was immature, was a lot shorter than me, didn't have gray hair, and, technically was made up of totally different cells than what I am. Like, none of those cells that was around 12 years old. So, if you use the same logic to say Janeway killed Tuvix, you could use this logic to say I killed my 12-year-old self. Which no one would say that, because that's fucking bullshit. Anyway, and it enrages me. Every time someone mentions this episode, every time someone brings up the debate, oh, did Janeway kill Tuvix? The debate is bullshit. Because Tuvix didn't die. Because Tuvix was always Tuvok and Neelix. They just restored him to his original version in the same way in Riddles that they referred Tuvok back to his original version of being all logical and thinking Neelix was an annoying little shit. It's a surgery. Call it a surgery. Stupid melodrama. Anyway, I should have realized how much my blood would be boiling by the end of recording this video, because that is the name of the video. Anyway, that is it for my top 10 Star Trek episodes that absolutely make my blood boil. And perhaps watching this video, you disagreed with me so strongly, your blood was boiling. But anyway, I do thank you for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed my content. You can check out my Patreon if you'd really like to support me for even more content and perks and other stuff. Be sure to subscribe as I keep reviewing episodes of Star Trek. Every episode of Star Trek, one episode at a time, currently in Voyager and Deep Space Nine, which I'm doing simultaneously because they aired simultaneously, so I'm going by air date. Just about to start Season 2 of Voyager, and then shortly after Season 4 of DS9. So, yeah, check out my channel for that and many other Star Trek and other show content. And thanks a lot for watching.